Well, let's just talk honestly. I mean, you've been in that portfolio for some time in the former government. I mean, you've got a minister who's just lost her cyber security expert. They had an update coming out next week. Who knows what will happen there? She's got the former, or current, he's actually just being stood down, secretary of the department on protracted leave, under an investigation because of text messages. We know that Giles, the immigration minister, who reports through to the Home Affairs Minister, Clare O'Neil too, was caught out doing a whole lot of fundraisers for ethnic communities in the recent Labor state election here in Victoria. I mean, you've got to wonder that this is not a department that's in turmoil, is it?
Well, the Home Affairs Department was once, under the coalition government, as you well know, a department that kept our borders secure. Now, it turns out that the government's got people arriving on boats that they haven't spoken about publicly. They've got women and children on Nauru at the moment, but the public hasn't been given the detail. And the fact is that the people smugglers see Clare O'Neil as a complete joke, as many people in her department do. She carries on like she's still playing student politics at university. And what happens when you get distracted by all of that nonsense is you take your eye off the ball and you allow criminals to be released into the community. And that's exactly what's happened here. The Department of Home Affairs has some amazing people in it, but at the moment, I think they're completely bewildered with the direction of the Albanese government, and there are decisions that the government's making which make it harder for those criminals to lose their visas in other cases. And we know that they've already watered down the laws which prevent people being sent back to New Zealand, for example, even if they've committed very serious crimes in our country.
You and I know, though, the fish rots from the head. I mean, you've got a Prime Minister who's barely in the country. He's gone to APEC. He's meeting with the Chinese President and the US President. We only met with them 2 weeks ago. It could have sent the Deputy Prime Minister. You have said he needed to stay in Australia, have a national cabinet. That doesn't get you a seat at the table. You're asking for a national cabinet because you want all the state premiers around the table to deal with, I guess, the growing concern about anti-Semitism and I think a real risk of civil unrest. Why do you want to see a national cabinet, and what do you think about Labor's, I guess, really mixed messages on the question of anti-Semitism?
Well, Peter, there's no doubt the Prime Minister has a role to play internationally, and we accept that. However, the situation is that the Prime Minister has to act in the best interests of Australians first, and the Australian public, the ones who voted for him, believing, frankly, that he was someone different than he's turned out to be, they voted for him knowing that, or believing that the Prime Minister would have them as his priority. And we said today the Prime Minister shouldn't travel overseas again until he fixes this problem. He needs to fix the problem with legislation in the Parliament this week to make sure that those people go back into immigration detention and that they don't pose a threat to the broader community. Secondly, and the very significant issue that the Prime Minister needs to deal with at the moment is the very significant rise of anti-Semitism. There is a very strong concern, bordering on fear, within the Jewish community at the moment. We're seeing all sorts of reported cases about anti-Semitic behaviour. The school activity that we've seen where kids just want to go and play, they're being violated against because of their religion, and the grotesque acts that we've seen from some protesters going into Jewish communities, trying to goad people into confrontation. That's completely unacceptable, and the Prime Minister has the responsibility to deal with it. The best way that he can deal with it is to convene a national cabinet, which hasn't been convened on this issue. That brings all the premiers and chief ministers together. It gets an understanding from the state and territory police commissioners on what is happening, what they're seeing, and there is overall leadership provided by the Prime Minister at that meeting so that the premiers can go away knowing what it is that is expected of them by the Prime Minister. Chris Minns at the moment seems to be playing a very strong role. Victoria's Premier is a disgrace. In Queensland, Premier Palaszczuk's essentially checked out, and you're having a situation where there's not a consistency of approach, and the Prime Minister should be stepping up and demonstrating a leadership based in strength, not weakness. And I think Australians at the moment are saying, well, hang on, you've got domestic issues to deal with. Before you go on yet another overseas trip, please stay, prioritise us and deal with these issues. And he's not doing that.
You're not wrong, Peter Dutton. Thank you for your time.